Welcome back, Chapter 18. Paula finally found Tommy in the basement bar. It was a place they hadn't visited except to pass through, simply because it literally was just a basement with no windows or views out to sea. She stood in the doorway and looked around. It was gloomy, dimly lit, and could be underground bar one might find in the city. Depressing, she realized now, and a glance at her husband told her that he was drowning his sorrows. Hope pierced her. He wasn't with that woman, wasn't in her bed making love and drinking champagne from her welcome hamper. And he hadn't sought solace with his mates. There was no sign of Dermot or Angus, or any of the other men who had suddenly become his bosom buddies. Apart from him, the room was empty, and feeling brave due to the lack of an audience, she walked over to the bar. He heard her approach, his head snapping up and around. Was it just her imagination, or did he look disappointed when he realized she wasn't Anna? She shook her head a little to banish the thought and slipped onto the bar stool next to him. There was a long silence, and he turned back to nurse his whiskey. "Do you want a drink?" he asked. Grudgingly, it seemed to her, but at least he'd spoken. "Yes, please," she said softly. He gestured to the bartender, ordered a vodka and soda without asking her. The bartender slid it over to her, his eyes lingering on the pair of them before he retired to wipe glasses in the shadow at the far end of the counter. Paula sipped at her drink, biting a straw to stop herself apologizing first. Tommy said nothing. Behind the bar, the second hand on the oversized clock ticked around and around. "I'm sorry," she said eventually. Stony-eyed, he looked straight ahead. She put a hand on his wrist. "I am sorry," she repeated, and as she said the words for the second time, she hated herself a little. Exactly. He shrugged and signed. "Okay." "Woo, child," he muttered. She withdrew her hand and put it primly in her lap, unsure of what his response meant. Now was the moment when he was supposed to turn to her and tell her that he was sorry as well, that he had been drunk, not that it was an excuse and he wouldn't do anything or crass as grind up against another woman again. "Did you take any of my money from the bedside drawer?" he asked. She blinked and frowned at the sudden change of directions. No," she said. "Why?" He shrugged again, and she felt a bleat of fury at the gesture, which was his answer to so many of her questions these days. "I'm missing some," he said. "A couple of €100." She was confused. His money had always been her money, their money. When they went away, they didn't have their own spending cash. It was all in. More to the point, she hadn't been anywhere to use any money. A thought struck at her as she stirred her drink with the straw. "Anna was in our suite," she said. "I went to the bathroom that night when I was locked in, and she was alone in there for a while." He hissed out a breath. "For God's sakes!" He drained his drink and turned to face her for the first time. She shrank back but forced herself to speak anyway. "Why are you defending her?" It came out as a whine, and she clenched her fist in frustration. He shook his head, held his hands up, and stumbled backwards off his stool. "I can't do this again. I can't go through your craziness again." Again? What was that supposed to mean? That she was always behaving crazy? Before she could ask him, he turned and made to walk away. She reached for him, snagging the sleeve of his coat, jerking him backwards, and he stumbled into the bronze handrail on the bar, banging his side. He clutched at his ribs and glared at her. "That's all, girl?" His eyes were filled with something she'd seen more times on this cruise ship than in all their years together. She let her hand fall to her side. "I'm sorry," she whispered. He simmered for a second before glancing at his watch. "It's nearly time for dinner. Are we going to eat tonight?" An olive branch, a peace offering. His face was creased with the scowl, but his words were a lifeline that she grabbed onto. She pushed herself off the stool, abandoned her drink, and followed him as he left the bar without waiting to see if she was behind him. At Tommy's suggestion, they dined in a smaller Japanese restaurant on the other side of the ship. It was the first time they hadn't eaten in the main restaurant. It was quiet, and even better, nobody they knew was in there. Paula sank into a chair and picked up the menu, pretending to read it while instead she scrutinized Tommy and tried to figure out what was going on in his head. His face was a blank. The scowl of earlier was gone, but his ready cheery smile had not put in an appearance. She was on the brink, she thought as she watched him, or rather, they were. On a precipice, there go that word again, precipice that could lead to her plummeting down into the lonely dark cave of singledom. She thought of Julie, how she sat in the house that she got free and clear of a mortgage and a divorce from her cheating husband. That's right. Start thinking, honey. Start thinking. She had her home. She had a lifestyle allowance that he still paid monthly. And yet Paula knew she would give it all up to have her man back. She bit her lip. For the first time, she knew how her friend felt. She didn't want to be sitting in a house that Tommy's pot of money had given her without him in it. But was it love, she wondered, or just fear? Either way, she couldn't think of how to make things right again. Not long until we dock in Iceland, he said. He had begun speaking to her again back in the suite while they were getting ready. She had walked around in her nicest lingerie, reaching back to the days when they were young and had made up the old-fashioned way after a fight. Today, as she moved around him in her underwear, deliberately and slowly, he kept his eyes on his phone, scrolling with his thumb, waiting patiently for her to get dressed. How long do we spend there? She asked, now playing the game nicely in the way he wanted. All day, enough time to see the scenery. She nodded and rolled her shoulders, tried to dissipate the tension that had built and built over the last few days. Maybe see the Northern Lights, she said, hopeful that his current favorite topic would perk him up. Maybe, he conceded. She watched as he pulled his phone out and started scrolling again. She sat up straight. Can I borrow that? She asked. I've not spoken to Julie in days. She'll have been sending me messages and she'll be worried that I've not answered her. His eyes raised and she shivered at the sudden intensity of his stare. Yeah, he answered finally. Let me just finish this. She wondered what was he thinking about her request. Did he think she had asked to use his phone so she could skip through his apps, through his texts and calls and emails to see if there was anything on there from Anna? Back and forth went his thumb, scrolling, flickering, jabbing at the screen. Deleting? Miserable, she slumped in her chair. When he was finally finished and passed the phone across the table to her, she shook her head. Doesn't matter, she said, smiling bravely. With an eye roll, he put the phone back in his pocket. Then the waiter arrived and Paula had to feign enthusiasm for a cuisine she didn't particularly enjoy. Child. Whew. She making me want to leave Tommy. I ain't even with him. Anna. It was a risk wearing the stolen wax jacket, but it was the only weatherproof outerwear Anna had. And besides, it wasn't like she was going to go out in public wearing it. She stood on her balcony, leaning far over while adrenaline pumped around her body, bringing a fresh wave of dizziness that she harnessed and held close. Below her, the wave smashed the starboard side of the Ruby Spirit and reached up towards her, 6, 7, 8, 10 feet tall sheets of ice-cold sea. Curling tentacles grappling and fought each other to get to her, and she watched, mesmerized by the danger until she remembered why she was out there. She hauled herself even further over the same rail that she had removed and pushed Mark through. Turning her head to the right, she gasped, a strangling choking sound, as the wind punched at her face. Tiny flakes of snow mingled with needle-sharp rain rendered her blind. She withdrew, clambered off the railing, and reversing back inside the suite. So she was about to jump? That's what it sounded like. She shrugged off the coat, leaving it on the floor and peeling off her clothes, then pulled on a fluffy robe around her shivering body. Picking up her phone, she huddled on the chair by the window, watching the sleet pelt down outside. She thought about giving up on the CCTV surveillance. Surely, if they had coverage, they would have been here questioning her already. A knock at the door had her snapping upright in a chair, as though they had sensed her thoughts, as though they had caught up with her. She shrugged inside the robe until it hung loosely around her, then tiptoed to the door and squinted through the peephole at the man who stood outside. He was older, this one, wearing the same uniform as Mark had. 3 stripes on his arms with the insignia of an albatross on the sleeve. She pulled the door open. He nodded to her and gave her a strange half salute. "Madame, I'm sorry to bother you. I'm First Officer Patrick Dwayne, and I wonder if I can have a moment of your time." Is she about to kill him too? Oh my gosh. She looked him up and down, compared him to the infamous man who had spoken to her in the casino. This one was a whole different ball game. That much she could tell straight off. Power and authority spoke volumes. She pulled the door open. "Come in," she invited. He stepped through and removed his cap. Underneath, his hair was short, military style, graying around the edges. His face was tanned with deep-set lines, and she could tell that underneath his clothes, he was muscular. He clearly took care of himself. She noticed that his eyes did not travel to the plunging neckline of her robe. She would have to be careful. "Is this about Mark?" she blurted. His face betrayed no expression as he nodded. "I understand you last saw him in Adelness when we docked." "That's right," she said cautionally. "His shift had finished and he got off the boat." He nodded, his granite eyes not leaving her face as he circled her and sat down uninvited in a chair by the window. "Only his shift hadn't finished," he said. He offered no further explanation. "Oh." Clutching her robe tightly, she followed him and sat down opposite. "This is unlike Mark." She nodded in agreement. "Did he tell you of his plans?" She looked down into the side. Outside the window, the sky was white with the promise of further snow. "Madame?" he prompted. "He was meeting a woman, I think." She spoke haughtily, her tone loaded with hesitation. He nodded. "Go on." Anna took a deep breath and exhaled. "I've known Mark for a while, before this cruise. Our relationship wasn't what you think." She picked up the belt of her robe and let it run through her fingers before glancing at Patrick. "We were friends." Patrick tilted his head. "So, he left his job to be with this woman?" Anna nodded. "He asked me not to tell, but I can see you're all worried about him." Even as she spoke, he berated her. She berated herself. This was a risky lie, too risky. He would have told his crewmates that he slept with her. Locker room talk, boys together. Anna was a catch, of course. He'd brag about her. "I'm sure he'll be fine," she said. Her tone was one of the finality signaling the end of the conversation. Patrick nodded gravely. Planting his hands on the arms of the chair, he pushed himself to a standing position. "Did he come to the Arctic suite often?" he asked. Anna concealed a sign. He was pressing her. "A couple of times. We were friends, like I said." Patrick's mouth twisted in an odd smile. "Were you also friends with his wife?" Ooh! It was as though the snow outside had entered the suite. A sudden chill, the realization like a violent blow to her chest. He didn't believe her. And she hadn't known Mark was married. She raised her chin. "Yes, of course." He nodded again. "Jasmine, isn't it? Mark's wife's name, I mean." She hesitated just for a moment. That's right. He turned sharply, moved towards the door. As he passed the coat hook, he stopped and stared. Is it the keys? She followed his eye line to the pink beret, only partially hidden behind her tailored black coat. He glanced back at her, his gaze moving swiftly past to settle on the floor behind her. She didn't turn around to see what he was looking at. She knew it was there, the stolen waxed coat. She remained defiantly still and silent. Finally, he spoke. Thank you for your help. She released the breath she had been holding. If I can be of any further, his name is Belle. His wife's name is Belle. Bella. Patrick interrupted her, caught in a lie. When cornered, do nothing, say nothing, she reminded herself. I'll be in touch, he smiled, but it was cold and distrustful. After a moment, he put his cap back on and left the suite. As she listened to his footsteps out in the corridor, she stared at the door, which he had left open. Caught in a lie. With a strangled sound that she tried to push down, she ran to the door and kicked it closed. Ooh, child. Paula. I'm going down to the bar. Paula sat on the bed and watched Tommy through the open bathroom door as he smoothed back his hair. She didn't push for an invitation. There was really very little point. It stung, though, and she sat up straighter and called through to him. I'll try and stay awake. Keep an eye out for the lights. Her voice was falsely jovial, a tone she hated. She was only just beginning to realize how much she used it when she spoke to him. Sure, he replied. She didn't know if it was an agreement or a question. Either way, he had responded, and that was a good thing. He was humming to himself now in the bathroom, and she felt her muscles relax at the sound. He was simmering down, their earlier argument drifting away. In the back of her mind, she knew it was a bad thing that they hadn't actually discussed anything, either his inappropriate behavior with Anna in the casino or her own deception about the pill. There had been no resolution, just bitter acrimony on his part that came off him in waves. She had backed off, apologized, or fallen to her knees and accepted the blame for everything, as usual. A sour taste filled her mouth, the familiar taste of disappointment, more at herself than him. And now she was expected to stay alone here in the suite until he decided to come to bed. There was a sudden flutter in her chest, an unprecedented urge to defy him. Though she knew, even as she felt it, that if she did, it would swing his mood back to a black one once more. She closed her eyes and saw them again, plain as day. Anna looking like a goddess at the roulette table, her head tilted back slightly, her lips parted, and Tommy behind her, thrusting against her, his mouth slack and foolish. She sat up, pushed her feet into the boots, reached for her hooded jumper, and pulled it on. Where are you going? He asked, emerging from the bathroom. A little thrill ran through her at his question. He does care. She pulled at the cord around the neck of her hoodie to see if there's an internet cafe or a computer I can use. I want to message Julie. He kept his eyes on her for a moment before apparently deciding this was okay by him. With a see you later, he picked up his key card and dodged out the door. She avoided the elevator. Instead, she took the stairs, circling down, 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 until the familiar mechanical hum told her she was nearing the engine room. There was a space down there, almost like a snug that she recalled seeing one time. She rounded the corner and smiled as the bank of 6 computers came into view. The lounge area was deserted. Unsurprisingly, she acknowledged, seeing as most of the passengers were probably up on deck searching fruitlessly for the northern light, or eating a late dinner, or whale watching, or something. She slid onto a chair, wiggled the mouse, and the screen popped to life. It was free to use, not rented by the hour like some internet cafes. As it should be, she supposed, with the amount the cruise cost overall. She logged onto Facebook, crushed a little by the fact that she had posted nothing at all on this holiday so far. She thought of the sights she had seen, the lush green mountains, the sheer majesty of the expedition suite, and the views from the ship as the Ruby Spirit cut through the choppy winter waters. So many missed opportunities, so many breathtaking moments that she had experienced alone, mostly because that woman had been hanging around trying to snare Tommy, trying to lure him away. She abandoned thoughts of Julie and instead typed Anna's name into the search engine, overcome by curiosity about the cuckoo trying to take over the nest that she had spent so long building. There was a stream of results: Instagram profiles, adverts for lawyers, obituaries, influencers. A succession of clicks confirmed that none of them was the Anna Massey who was currently haunting Paula. Puzzled, she sat back in her chair. Surely someone who oversaw a nationwide company, one that was soon to be international, should have a profile somewhere. Good point. Very good point. Eventually, she clicked off the screen. The home page was a news site, and as she sat there chewing the skin around her thumbnail, deep in thought about the mysterious Anna Massey, she idly scanned the articles. Is it going to be the article about the man dying? The Essex thing popped up. The old man who had died, the one where the carer had vanished with his money. The photo was there again, in color this time. The carer's face was obscured as she glanced off to one side. The only thing that was really visible was her coat, black and tailored, and the pop of color from the vivid pink beret that sat atop her head. She doesn't look like the hired help, thought Paula as she scrolled down the page. She looked expensive and fierce and confident. She looked like everything Paula herself tried to portray, but was never sure she actually carried off. She was about to click off the page, already thinking about returning to her suite, having a cup of tea, and breaking open the box of chocolates from the welcome hamper that she had so far managed to resist. The mouse was hovering over the cross in the top right corner when her finger stalled. She leaned closer to the screen and scrutinized the photo of the woman, and suddenly her heart began to beat in double time. Slamming doors and sudden footsteps startled her. There was a flurry of activity in the previous deserted lounge. Paula sank down in her chair as bodies came from seemingly everywhere, not even casting a glance her way as they chatted excitedly about notifications they had received about the last of the Leon showers, which were apparently happening right now. They moved in a herd, stampeding towards the elevators. Finally, there was the promise of the lights, the very reason for this cruise. She watched as the last trickle of passengers squeezed into the lift. She should join them, really, should look for Tommy and make sure he heard the announcement. Instead, she remained at the computer terminal, bound to her chair by a force of invisible as the lights had been thus far. Soon, silence descended. She was alone again. Anna paced in her suite. In the corner of the room was a pile of incriminating items: the wax jacket, the pink beret, Paula's mobile phone, Mark's keys and phones, the plastic sheeting, and the spanner. She surveyed them all, the pieces that could be used as evidence against her. Then she moved to the door, slid it open, stepped out onto the balcony. This time, she ignored the snowflakes that the wind spat at her. Leaning over the side, she glanced down, saw the merriment of some sort of party in the balcony below, a handful of people, music from an iPhone speaker. They huddled in their coats, arms and voices raised, glasses clicking as they stared upwards, waiting for the last of the light show. No chance of throwing the stuff overboard. She looked back inside. She would dispose it in Iceland. She would pack everything in her rucksack and take it off the ship. If First Officer Patrick Dwayne should come back, she would be ready for him and her suite would be clean. She pushed her hair back and shuffled inside. Perhaps she should get off in Iceland. Melt into the, yeah, we ain't pronouncing that, crowds, and start anew in a different country. But then this trip would have been a total and utter waste of time and money. She would lose the biggest prize of all, Tommy and everything he owned. With her foot, she slid the door closed and sank to the floor with her back to the glass, cornered. The net was closing in on her and she was trapped. Yes, that's the end of chapter 18. Ooh. First of all, let's talk about, we already sick of Tommy. We already sick of Paula pacifying Tommy. We sick of Paula, making herself small for Tommy, a person who don't even give a crap about her. And I was like, girl, that's all you did was make him slam into the thing and hurt his ribs. But she is on a cruise and you got to think about stuff like that. But I'm sick of them. I'm sick of them. Let's talk about Anna. This officer, he called her out. He was like, I don't believe you. And he was smooth with it too. Made her, she kind of thought he wasn't, believing her. But then when he was about to leave, he was like, I don't believe you. Boom. To find out his wife's name is Bella. Oh my God. The guy had a wife and she didn't know it. Like they said, she cornered. She is cornered. What you going to do, Anna? And what was the last word? Let me go back to that last word. Cornered. She was courting a lot and cornered. What are you going to do, Anna? And I almost forgot about this part. Paula put 2 and 2 together from the article that's in color and the pink beret. And she kind of see that as Anna. What she gonna do now? Tommy, and she better not run to Tommy. That's all I know. She better not run to Tommy because Tommy don't believe you for shit. Oh, my bad. I'm sorry. Keep this to yourself, girl. Keep it to yourself. And I think that's it. I think that's it because I don't want to go too far. All right. So that's it. We're going to, see what Paula going to do with the information she found out. And 2, how Anna going to get out of this one. It's about to go down because it's Iceland. We on chapter 19, y'all. We got 9 more chapters to go. I'm going to see y'all in the next chapter. Bye for now.